what year were you born?
1923.
1923. All right. Tell me, paint a picture for me. What life was like for you, your family, your friends, as you were growing up as a child.
At an early age, I was the youngest one in my family. There were four of us, two boys and two girls. And of course, I was a little bit petted because I was the last to come. And at an early age, my father had to go away because there were no jobs for blacks in New Bern, North Carolina. And he went to Virginia to his sister. So that meant my mother had to raise all four of us. My sister, who was 8 years old when I was born, my brother, 2 years after that, after my sister's birth, and the other brother, who was 2 years after the second brother's birth. And then 4 years later, my mother had a miscarriage, of course, 2 years later, and then 4 years later, I came. She was a very disciplinarian, and she saw to it that we did the right things at all times. So much so I was laughing at something that happened at age 28, and nobody would have thought about anybody getting permission to go somewhere at age 28. So that sort of tells me that I could, that's what happened between that length of time. But in school, I was okay, because usually I was just above average. I guess I could have been par excellent had I known that it would make any difference after a while. And so, from the first through the eighth grade, I stayed, okay, pretty good. Nothing bothered me about doing things, and within that time, I was asked lots of times what I like to do, and I like to dance, and I like to sing. And of course, the dance wasn't discovered because at that time we didn't do so much about dancing. And my mom was a churchgoer, and that never interested Pitcher very much. But someone did locate the fact that I did have a little tune in my voice, and so that went well with me. And of course, from first to eight, I'll say pretty good. And then 8 through 12, through 11, we only went to, that time, we only went to uh, the 11th grade. Have I told you enough about it?
Well, I just asked you to paint the picture there. Could you tell me about education, and was it stressed for you? What did your parents say? What were your expectations when it came to school and learning and education?
Education was not a stress because it just fitted right in the program, and it wasn't, I didn't find any difficulty in it. And of course, I was quite playful, so I most of the time when I wasn't reading something, I was fitting in with the other girls and boys who like to do things, and I wasn't allowed to do too much outside of the home because mom had to be sure that we got in the right places at the right time. Like, don't come in here after dark. When it starts darkening, that's the time for you to come home, and pretty soon after that, you go to bed. I look at children now; they have a choice of meals. We did not, because she had to stretch whatever we got, and we made ourselves satisfied. What else?
Now, tell me about going to school, because the special part about your story, of course, is going to graduate school and having the long gap and finishing it up. Tell me about right going into that during the first time around.
Okay. When I graduated at age 16. I graduated at age 16. Um, and at that time, I had my mind set on going to nursing school. And I sent to Louisiana and asked them, could I come to a nursing school? And they told me I had to be 19. So I said to myself, I don't want to wait that long. Of course, I had to wait because my brother was going to Central. And Central was named at that time North Carolina College for Negroes. And he said to me, if you wait 2 years, he said, I'll be finishing Central and I will send you to college. And I knew there wasn't anything to worry about waiting because, after all, I didn't have anything to go into place with. So, in 2 years' time, he came out of the CC camp. That was what all that black boys had to do for them. And in the meantime, while he was getting an education, finishing an education at North Carolina Central for North Carolina College for Negroes, that took a period of 2 years. I became we washed and ironed for we were blacks to wash and iron for whites, and like 50 cents a wash and 75 cents, and most like mom didn't get more than $3 per week, and so one day while we were washing and ironing right after finishing school, a knock came on the door, and the lady said, the person who came said, Mrs. Mann would like to talk with Sylvia Edwards. And so, no, Sylvia Bell. That time I was Sylvia Bell. And I said, Mom, I said, somebody here want to talk with you. Said, no, not here. So you'll have to go downtown, which was about, we say 3/4 of a mile away. I don't know if I'm timing right. And Mom said, you go. I'm jobbing these clothes on the stove to get the dirt out. And so I went, and when I got to the door, and they opened the door for me at this fabulous, sort of like a mansion, because the lady who was sending for me was the superintendent of schools. And the man who was there with her was her pastor. His name was Dr. Johnson. And I, very talkative like I am now, I went on saying, Mom said she couldn't come. And don't send for her to do any more washing, because we got all the washings we can do. And so she said, I didn't send for you. Are you Sylvia? I said, yeah, but my mom's name is Sylvia Bell. So she said, I'm not sending for the older Sylvia Bell. I'm sending for the younger Sylvia Bell. I said, well, I'm the younger Sylvia Bell. So she said, are you the daughter of Moses Bell? I said, yes. She said, did you graduate this year? I said, yes. She said, well, you the one we want to talk to. She said, Mary McLeod Bethune has talked to Eleanor Roosevelt, and she has told them that black children don't have anywhere to go after they finish school. And she said, and someone said, well, we have a graduate in our school, the Episcopal Church. Well, at that time, I was in a Methodist church, and most black people were in Methodist or Baptist churches. And so she said, your daddy was in our church before he left to go to Virginia. She said, and we found out that you had graduated, and the program is going to begin. So we're going to ask you, would you like to get in that program? What else could I want to do? I didn't have anything. I didn't have anywhere, nothing to go into. So she said, I said, well, what will it be like? She said, well, all you have to do is whatever the teachers need in the county of Craven, say you will be on duty to supply it. And so I said, well, that sounds nice. I said, thank you. She said, but we're starting off, I think I'm right. We're starting off with $6 a month. I wasn't getting anything, so that was good. From $6, it did go from 9 to 16. I ended up getting $16 a month. So she put me in this nice building, and I had like a little office. I wasn't even used to knowing about nobody office, a black person with an office. And I stayed there until they decided they were going to move me from that place downtown. And then it was like a little alley. And the lady who was over, her name was Charlotte Roan, and she was a social worker. And she had a degree in nursing. But they were fairly well to do because they ran a hotel, the only black hotel we've ever had, and the only one looked like we're going to ever have in New Bern, North Carolina. And so she looked at me and said, oh, you one of them James City girls. And, you didn't, I was bad enough to be a New Bern girl, in a little town. And James City was just across the river. And I said, no, I don't come from James City. So she said, well, all right, sit down. I want you to do something for me. So she told me to write. And I guess that's why I put so much emphasis on trying to make good writing when I do write. So I wrote for her, and she says, "Oh, you have a beautiful handwriting." And so, first along, I didn't like her attitude, so I walked out. And the guy that was there, he knew my father because they lived on the same street. And I said, "Well, I'm going home." He said, "No, don't do that. Stay here. This lady is not what she seems to be. She's okay." He walked a whole block, a city block with me, and talked with me. He said, "Come on back." His name was George. Oh, George's last name. I can't think of George's last name. And I said, "Okay." I went back. He was the lady's chauffeur, and I was the lady's secretary. But I didn't know anything but longhand. And at that particular time, the job she gave me was her secretary. And some guy, there were three of the old maid sisters, and some guy was trying to court her through the mail through New York. And she said, "I want you to answer his letter because I don't have time to be bothered with him." Oh, I was reading books and I got so romantic. And she read the letter. She said, "I like what you said on there." So I was the one that corresponded with this guy. So after she liked me so much and my writing, she said, asked me would I stay on. I said, "Well, I have nothing else to do." So I stayed with her. At the time I went to stay with her, there were three ladies that were working as her secretary. She had three people working for her. One was, but I don't think I'm going to get the names right. But one was getting ready to leave to go to the army. And I wasn't used to our black women. I wasn't used to women going to the army. Then I wasn't used to black women going anywhere like that. The one that was nearest my age, she was leaving to go to the Navy. And the other one was leaving to go to the Library of Congress, Washington, D.C. The two of them, the one that was going to the army and the one that was going to the Washington, D.C., and I don't want to say this either because I was going to say that only one of them had commercial training. And so the first two left, one Washington, D.C., the other one to the Army. And they left, and it just bidded me goodbye. But this last one, she looked at me, and it sort of looked, how can we leave her with this? So she said, "You're going to need to learn to type." And at that time, we didn't have commercial in New Bern in school. And so she said, "Would you like to learn?" I said, "Yeah, but I don't see how I can do that." She said, "I'll show you." So she said she got the book, and the typewriter was there. And she said, "Now you look at that and you study this row, the top row, and the bottom row." And she said, "But put your hand on the middle row." And she said, "Now remember where each one of your fingers was." She said, "You're going to have to do this. Learn where each one of your fingers was. And then run one finger up and one." And she did that to me until I sort of got where my fingers belonged to go without knowing. And then about 2 or 3 days later, she covered those keys. And I learned a little bit before she left. And after she left, she said, "Don't forget." She said, "Practice." She said, "I'm going to leave you, and you're the only one left here by yourself." And I said, "Okay." And really, I did learn to type. And, well, there was nobody in the department. The department of the superintendent, she was white. There were 2 or 3 caseworkers, they were white. And because New Bern did not have commercial, anybody that they hired didn't know how to type. So I gained the secretarial thing to both Miss Charlotte Roan, who was black, and the 3 white caseworkers. It did all right. It wasn't so good, But there was one thing Miss Charlotte always said. When she came in out of the field and she had gone to the different blacks' homes that were getting welfare, she would say, "There's no change in the situation. At 88, I can still write. Changing the situation. Okay, so I stayed on for 2 years there. And when I got ready to leave, my brother had come out of school. And so he said, now you're ready to go to school. You've already chosen your school. And that was Winston-Salem Teacher College. And so, but I cried the whole while trying to get on the bus. And he and Mom at the bus station said, well, you don't have to go if you don't want to. I said, but I want to go. I want to go. And I went on. And when I went there, I just made straight A's. And so much so that when I did graduate from there, I graduated cum laude. But it was such an experience. And the second year I was there, the music teacher discovered that I had the ability to do operatic singing. And so he was so upset with me in the beginning. You've been here a whole year and you haven't let us know what you could do. And I was afraid because I was crying from fear and crying because I had to leave my mom. I had never left my mom before. And crying because I was out underneath my brother because my brother he took the place of my dad. And he said to me one night, he looked at me, he said, you will know how to tell time tomorrow. So sit right there until you get it. And I did.
Wow. So when you go from college, and then we're talking about graduate school, what was that
when I went to
story like?
When I went to graduate school, I decided that I did not want to. As I told you, I didn't go to nursing school. I decided that I did not want to go to Columbia University because everybody from New Bern in our area down south would go to Columbia, and I said I don't want to go where everybody goes. So I made up my mind that since my daddy's people, some of them had located in Pennsylvania, I would try there, and so I wrote and got admission to University of Pennsylvania. And when I did, I started staying with two aunts of mine. One was worker in a home. She attended to everything in a white home, very rich. And then the other one was a person who just did day's work, the other aunt. But both of them were preachers. And they just wanted, I couldn't wear earrings, I couldn't wear makeup, I couldn't wear a low-cut dress. And I had an uncle, he was a barber there. And he wouldn't let his wife wear things of that nature. And you'd have to be just careful how long your dress was. And I said, well, I just not enjoying this. I'll tell you, I got to find me another place. So then the next year I decided I would, I had already worked. I had already worked six years. I had already worked a while. And I had money enough to get my room in the dormitory, University of Pennsylvania. So the next 3 years I did that. And I did all my courses. In the meantime, I fell in love. And the whole 4 summers that I was there, my husband that I married and lived with for 49 years and 1 month wrote me a letter every day. And I started keeping the letters. And when I got ready to leave the University of Pennsylvania, it said that if you don't finish when you stop, you'll have 7 years to make up your mind to do that. In the meantime, my mother got sick with cancer. She got sick with same thing with me now. She got sick with cancer. She got sick with arthritis. But the one thing she got, I didn't get, diabetes. But I got everything else. I got married. I took my last course in 52. My last course at the University of Pennsylvania, I took in 52. I got married in 52. My mom died. No, my first child was born in 54, and the second child was born in 55. The insurance company put us out. We don't need them. And so, but my mom died in 56. And, well, I just didn't think of it anymore. 7 years, all that time. 7 years done passed, so why worry about that? Plus the fact that when things, my mom had no Social Security, my mom had nobody gave her anything for cancer, my mom had nothing. The only salary that was coming in was my husband's salary. And my mom had nerve enough to ask her sister to come down from New York to live with us. And the sister didn't have any insurance or anything. And the husband had just died. And he didn't leave anything. But anyway, we went on with that. And everything went well. I taught for 33 years. My husband didn't want me to work, but I knew I needed to work to sort of fill in, you know. And after that 33 years, well, I have to tell things in between. But after not getting the degree, I just didn't make up my mind to do it. So I can end it real quick by saying that my nephew, who's standing over there, he just thought that I could do. He said, I have my doctorate degree. You can get your master's at least. So he said, when I come back to New Bern next week, you have me some material. And I said, well, what can I have? So I just passed it off. I said, 7 years past, everything, forget it. So he came back about 2 weeks later. He said, did you get my material together? I said, no, but I'm looking for it. So when he left that time, I knew he meant business. And so I said, I'm going to get something together. So my husband had passed away. And about 2 weeks after he passed away, on the foot of my bed, I found these letters that he had written me every day at the University of Pennsylvania. And I said, well, let me look through them. And when I looked in there, I found a lot of the stuff that I had done. I found the library from Pennsylvania that I had gone to. I found some of my grades. I found the year I went there, the entrance, I went there. And when he got back, he said, make copies of this. I said, I'm not going to ever need it again. You take the whole original, And he said, well, I want you to have it. And I said, no, in case you just carry it on with me. He hadn't been gone more than about 2 weeks when he called me back. He said, you know what? Those people think that's something worthwhile. So I said, what? He said, yeah, and they told me they would get back with me. I said, get back with me? He said, yeah. And about less than a month from then, they got back and said, it has a veracity to it. And I said, what? And less than a month after that, they sent me word that they would be able to look in the archives and prove that I had done all the work that was necessary. All I had not done was what the last examination where you do your last test, and sometimes it's not written but oral. And they knew if I had gotten all this other thing done, they didn't need to worry about that. That's my story.
So this whole time, all you were missing was one last test.
Test.
And did you realize that was all that you were missing?
Yes. But I thought you'd have to, know that, this is, I got to have everything. And that was one of the things.
All right. So once they award that after all these years, and you had a service at church where it was...
Okay, so when he found out that, he asked them to send him the certification of it. And they sent him whatever was necessary, the great big plaque and everything. and he got together. I just don't know how he got so much together, because he even had the robe, the right kind of robe that I was supposed to have with all the colors and everything. And I was telling him last night, I said, that day, I guess I was excited, but having come to be my age, you when you're eating, you're a spiller more than you are a taker. And I had a dress that my sister-in-law had given me, a pure silk chiffon, and one of the sons had walked out on the grass, and the other son was talking to him. And I said, "Well, how you like my dress I'm gonna wear today?" And he said, "Ma, I hate to tell you, but Sylvester's already told me that dress got a big grease spot on it." I said, "What? Why you didn't tell me?" He said, "Well, I just decided I wouldn't tell you." I said, "Well, I needed to know." So I went in and changed out of that dress. I put on another dress. I didn't like that dress. I put on the third dress. And when I got to the church, there at the church was the robe, the colors, the cap, and a little guy that had told me that he was going to, he had been impressed at at the Crown Palace when I was able to speak with the others at the palace. He said, "I was so impressed with you." And I say, "When I saw in the paper that you were going to get your degree, I said, I'm going to take DVDs of her." And he did. And that night after the ceremony, he had taken DVDs and he sent me 10. And when I got to the ceremony, Dr. Bell said to me, um, "I don't want you to use so much time, you know." He said, just a little." And I got up and I said, "My nephew doesn't want me to use too much time." I say, "So thank all of you all for coming," and sat down.
Well, who was it for? When you see that degree that's been so long, coming to you, who all did you think about?
The major person I always think about is my mom first, because she was such a disciplinarian. There were times I could have slipped. Then the second person I thought about was my nephew. He had enough patience with me. He had enough belief in me. He had told me something that I hadn't even never thought about. He said, "When I begun to read well," he said, "I was at your house one day and you separated a sentence. And from that day forward, I knew I could read." Then I thought about my brother. Of all the people, he always wanted me to have the very best. And he would always act just like I'm sure a father should have acted. And that was the oldest brother, Edward. I think about my sister. She was 8 years old when I was born. And she would always say, um, "You all I have." I said, "Don't say that. Don't ever let your children." She had 6 children, 4 boys, four girls and 2 boys. I said, "Don't ever let your children say that. Although you love me like that, don't say it out." I thought about her. Then I could appreciate my father for being born, you know. And I thought about the different characters he has. My mom was a very, very, very quiet person. But my father talked all the time. And then I can never forget that wonderful husband of mine. Oh, I call him my giant. He just put up with me because I talked all the time. You see that today. I don't have to tell you that over again. I thought of the neighbors who took care of the children. I thought of my whole street. And some nights we would get on the porch and sing. And we would sing together. And the tenor that would come from that area, the alto that would come from over there. It was so marvelous. Then I thought of how well all of my relatives seemed to like me. They just seemed to like me. And anytime you got somebody pushing behind you, you can always know that you can make it. And then the teachers, whenever you hear me recite anything, I had a teacher named Ms. Loretta Smith. And I would just, when she would be teaching something, I just learn it right off. And lots of times when I'm reciting, Dr. Bell says to me, well, let me hear that again. I want to hear that again. He is interesting too. He does a lot of petting me.
Last question here. What do you think about kids now, or I guess the youth of our country? You did it, and you had a lot of things happen, and you finished. People who just don't seem to care or don't put forth the effort, easily distracted, whatever. And you had, lots of years in education, so you've seen it all. What do you think about people who come up short, and it just seems to be on their own accord that they do that?
Well, the parentage has quite a bit to do with that, because that is where they get their start. And that is where we as a people should realize that time is important, discipline is important. The things kids start off early in life with, that they should not be allowed to participate. They might be allowed to participate just enough to give you the chance to show them this isn't really what you need. We need to, as parents, I learned last night something from my son. I didn't know that I had put in him a will to know that I'm just as good as anybody else. That's what he brought out last night. He said, Mom made us go to the white school. We didn't want to go. He said, but when I got down there and the other black children were complaining, he said, it didn't bother me because I knew I was as good as anybody else. So the children are not totally responsible. The parents should start early. I had an aunt who said to me one time, when a baby hits you, hit him back and let him know that that isn't the right process. I just was upset with her for a long time. I just look at her kind of sideways. But instruction in all direction is very important. Then after you give the right instruction, then the child can catch on to what is the right way to go, And so this is the thing I say. If we sort of lean down on them lightly, sometimes you can press too hard. We know that on anything. And let them know that I have confidence in you. And I know you can make it and will make it. But I'm going to have to do a lot of things. I was in a graduation, and this graduation was my great-great-grandchild from kindergarten. And those children stood up there and recited the first psalm. The whole 30 or 40 of them recited the first psalm all the way through. I was so impressed. I didn't know what to do. So if you can get 40 children to do something like that, somebody has been working. Somebody has said you can do it. My mom knew I could do it. The first time I got really upset with someone taxing my youngest son, the lady sent home a page, both sides, with something he need to memorize to come out of the kindergarten that year. And I was so upset with her, I did not know what to do. That got over quickly, because when he got home, he had already memorized the front page. And I said, you know it. I said, but hand it here, let me see if you know it. And when I sat there and looked at it, he went right straight through. He didn't miss a thing. I said to myself, if you can learn one page, you can learn two. Go and get the other one. And you stand to the front door, and I'm going to stand in the kitchen and say it loud so I'll know what you're saying. And pronounce your words. So we need a good beginning.